Gort Show is sponsored by Ellipsis Labs. Ellipsis Labs is building Atlas, the blockchain purpose-built for verifiable finance. You may know of Ellipsis Labs by their first product, Phoenix, a fully on-chain order book DEX that's done over $50 billion in unincentivized volume. This is one of the strongest teams I know in crypto. If you're interested in working for a mission-driven company, Ellipsis Labs is hiring engineers who are passionate about crypto and finance to work on Atlas. You can learn more and apply on Ellipsis Labs Twitter, @ellipsis_labs. Don't forget to check out Atlas too, @AtlasXYZ on Twitter. Hey guys, very special guest today. Somebody maybe a bit different than what I normally do, but somebody who I think has had a massive impact on certainly the cultural aspect of Twitter and crypto at large in the past 2 years, let's call it, at least like from, what I've seen. Somebody who's developed like maybe one of the strongest communities in all of crypto. Most of you guys will probably know him. Charlotte Fang, welcome. If you don't mind introducing yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. So I run Remilia, which most people would know for Milady. We just launched Cultcoin, and I am a avant-garde art terrorist. I am a cyber accelerationist and a cult leader, according to all of our various cancels.
I've never had a cult leader on, so this is pretty exciting for me. Okay. So a little bit about your background. Mainly, let's talk about it from the art side, not so much you, but what is Milady and what is the inspiration for Milady?
Yeah, so maybe I'll go back a little bit further to when we started Remilia, because Milady was kind of meant to be the identity badge, the PFP signifier of people that were part of Remilia, which is really something of a art movement. We call it new net art, and when we started Remilia, the goal was basically we were a lot of us are disenfranchised artists, people who were either art students that dropped out or never joined into the art world at all, because in the period prior, since like the 2016 to now, art was going through a lot of politicization, censorship, woke ideology, and all that kind of stuff, and it was most alienating for people that were very interested in working online, because the online space was so anarchist and just so many, it's almost impossible to be online and not trigger some of these, the woke censorship guardrails. So I grew up in that era and saw that and decided to just instead start doing work online outside of any kind of art world platforming, financialization, etc. But when I became aware of NFTs towards the end of 2020, I realized this is an opportunity to break into the space in a way where we can now financialize our own digital art, and thereby create a platform that we didn't have to rely on the infrastructure of galleries, critics, curators. The goal was actually just to get big enough that they would be forced to take us seriously. And I think right now that's what we've accomplished 3 years later, with Milady over 200 million market cap. I guess that's the number that it took for them to start seriously paying attention. But when we launched Milady, what we were doing there was trying to take the PFP NFT design, something like Bored Apes, Crypropunks, etc., but making it actually like an experimental avant-garde project by imbuing it with these values of our this new net art movement, which has certain part of it was being anti-censorship, but also embracing a pseudonymous practice, taking on alternative names, and not being so focused on personal brand making, but collective brand making, which you can see through Milady as something that even like with Remilia, I don't use my real name for it, and it's not out of even crypto anonymity, but more for the allegiance to pseudonymity.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to go we don't have to dwell too much on this, but can you I'm sure most all of my listeners know Milady. For those really deep in the mechanism design weeds who are never on Twitter, you may possibly know that Elon Musk tweeted a Milady, which was sort of there's quite a bit of lore, but that was the moment when I was like, that's pretty, I think that kind of crossed the chasm in my mind. But regardless, what is the actual inspiration for the art? I know you've talked about this neo-chibi 1990s Japanese aesthetic. Just briefly explain that to those of my listeners who may not be so familiar with this kind of the actual design aspect.
Yeah, so I guess there's two lines that I've talked about, two coinages essentially. One is I call it left-hand art, and what I mean is I'm interested in work that looks like it's outsider or amateurish, basically like the appeal of the soul of a drawing by a child that you put on the fridge. There's something there that's kind of magical and innocent. And I actually one of our earliest like working logos before we had our evil little smiley face was the cat that appears in the back of Beat Happening's self-titled 1981 album, and that was kind of a signifier for this vision for the collective. Beat Happening was a band that led the early DIY indie movement in the Seattle area. Bands like Nirvana were part of that, but they got started by basically saying that we're going to start a band, but we're all going to play the instruments that we don't know how to play. The drummer plays guitar, the guitar plays drums, and we're going to try to embody the feeling of like if you had a bunch of kids and you started a band. So Milady was is originally fan art of another existing anime character, and it's literally just a trace of this character that we took and we said like, okay, I want this to be the base of this PFP, because we're going to basically do an experiment in taking an existing character and through remixing and detouring it, create a new character out of it that has no origins in that basic material. That was combined with introducing a lot of Japanese alt styles like Gyaru, Lolita, Hypebeast, which formed the traits of the collection. But that was also part of even that element was interesting because it was a collective contribution from my art collective, which was formed in a group chat, but they all submitted all these different pieces. So actually all the pieces in Milady are existing, they're actual like items from fashion archives. So some of them are original, and then we've ended up producing them ourselves and made them like part of our merch. But the meat of them were actually citational. So there's a lot like there's like references to like Ralph Simmons or Gucci pieces, etc. Balenciaga. The other element is when I say neo chibi. So chibi refers to if you've ever seen like an anime girl, but an almost distorted, small toddler-looking version of one with big eyes, super expressive. That's the chibi style, and what I wanted to do when I call it neo chibi, it's with this combination of sort of, it's not that refined industrial aesthetic that anime has where it's almost perfected, but this sort of outsider imitation. And again, it was inspired by like when a kid wants to draw anime, that sort of awkwardness that still has this soul that's really nested in the eyes. Milady was designed to be something that we were very conscious about it working effectively as a profile picture, in the sense that it has large eyes that you can empathize with, and it has this neotenous features that induces some kind of cute reaction, because I believe that actually makes it more effective and more powerful for somebody to borrow. So with Milady, and this is a thesis that I have that I've experimented with prior to Milady, but basically this is the first time we did it on like a generative level where we can hand out 10,000 profile pictures. But essentially it's like, if you put it on, you start posting differently. You start to embody this little feeling of almost cute aggression that Milady has. And we encourage people to do that, especially if there's somebody that has their own real name and face attached to their profile, create a Milady alt and start to embody this character in this posting. And when they also get involved in this entire Milady scene, where we're also encouraging people to post aggressively, post freely, just make up stuff, lie, say that you're going to go bring a gun to the Apple store, and also just copy, paste other people's tweets, steal it, post as fast as possible without thinking. It means that actually like putting on the Milady changes the way you approach the timeline meaningfully. And that was how we really started to build an audience, because it was essentially like we had found a way to package and translate and distribute what was otherwise a quite niche experimental approach to posting online.
That I think you've had tremendous success for what it's worth. I mean, my personal perspective, but from what I see on the timeline, I think that I honestly, I kind of came into this without, uh, as you know, most of the people I probably talk to are more in the mechanism design weeds, but like, when you describe it like this, I think you've pretty much nailed it. So what was it about the way that you built this community? And so you can sort of compare this to other NFT communities, or we can get into that later. You don't have to name names, but we can compare it, or just talk about like maybe what was it that enabled you to like have such incredible success thus far. Like all of these random crypto Twitter people are now, like, the way you describe it, I would say they're more or less embodying exactly what you've kind of hoped for. What enabled this?
Yeah, and we can name some names like Bored Apes, for example, always presented as the counter thesis, and it was something that we saw and we wanted to respond to because we just disagreed with the way it was being approached. Milady is layered, and that's also why if you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. What's appealing about it? It speaks to people from different audiences, and also there's a question of just how engaged you get at the very top level. It's just, the art is appealing. But even as I've described, even that was somewhat, it's not just appealing art, it's somewhat consciously thought through as something that stands out and is experimental in its own right, even if we're just looking at the visual design. But then as you get deeper, there's, on some level, it's that Milady represents something that I think when you're looking at maybe your audience on the mechanism design, Milady has a large following with developers, especially people around the Ethereum protocol development and late L2s and that side of things. And I think that early appeal, which was very surprising, especially for a lot of these teams. Often I'd meet founders that they only knew Milady because half their devs are wearing this, and they're like, ask me like, why? What are they doing? These guys don't even trade. Like, they think NFTs and meme coins are dirty, and I'm like, well, hey, I do too. But it's only dirty because of the way it's been approached until we came in and gave a better direction. But with Milady, I think it was because I'm also I'm a very hardline cyber anarchist. I've been reading when I was young, I read through the whole cypherpunk mailing list, and I'm a subscriber to even everything, not just like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but like Urbit and other decentralized platforms. So I when I came into crypto Twitter, as we came in from an art perspective, I'm also coming from this kind of tech background where I'm a big believer in freedom of information, right to hardware, etc. I saw that these are traders that don't actually even know anything about like cypherpunk values. There was at the height of like Web3 where they were talking about diversity and inclusion and all this kind of crap. And it's like, how does that fit in when we're here trying to maintain anonymous networks? How do you even inject identity politics in? How are you arguing about you're canceling your own employees? I think like Rainbow Wallet had a high profile cancel, or Andy Cool Cats had tried to cancel another NFT collection for some of his assets. And I was my argument is this does not fit in crypto whatsoever, because we're we embody anonymity, and in an anonymous space, we're in ANCAP or libertarian spaces too. Identity is not relevant so much as your actual actions and your results, your performance. So I was posting these long screeds, and this was I was a lowbie. Nobody in crypto Twitter knew me, but I'm posting these screeds about diehard cyber anarchism and from translating it into a more social perspective and that kind of commentary. So we got a large following from there, and Milady became the badge of I've posted recently the cyberpunk NFT collection. It's let's be real, they've never been cyberpunk. Milady is the cyberpunk NFT, and I don't think anybody can argue with that. Then on another level, the question was how were we so successful? So that's one layer. On another level too, it's just fun. It's nobody likes to have to approach Twitter like LinkedIn, and when you tell them that you can put on a Milady and it's the driver's license for having fun online, you can get away with anything. That's very entertaining. And when normally, it's fine. You can tell somebody, yeah, you can just say anything, but it doesn't work unless you have a movement of people with you willing to back you up. And now you're able to post freely in a swarm. And that's what Milady provided, is the so-called utility. And it's a strong horse, so it's natural that it would win. And we're out there like starting off as a small niche on crypto Twitter where people are like mad at us for trolling them. And then, eventually we even get canceled because we're just trolling too hard and they fall for the bait. But those controversies always just grows our user base because, you get one guy like canceling you for engagement, but 100 of their followers, maybe some of them fall for it. Some of them are just not paying much attention. They go through and say, oh, that's crazy. But anybody that looks in realizes, well, no, wait, this is actually like a lot of fun, what these people are up to, and they want to join in. So I think Milady has just steadily grown, probably literally linearly, over us just staying very consistent doing this. And I think now we're at a stage, it's like, not to get like political. I mean, obviously we're political, but not to get like mired in contemporary politics rather than something more with more longevity. But with Trump's win here in this election, I feel like it's also a victory of against these kinds of woke trends that we were fighting against, and it's a cultural pendulum swing back towards a more like the freewheeling or early 2000s era style. And that's like a big bet that we were making. And basically we're just in a position now that like, okay, culture's coming to us, and the Overton window that we were sitting outside is now we're inside. So I think it's just also going to blow up more from here. We've obviously saturated through crypto Twitter, but I think Milady as a brand has a large following in like the arts as well. And that's something that until now they've been very cautiously, watching from the sideline.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the like cancel culture aspect, but I do want to ask you, you said sort of at the beginning, and I don't know how much ingest this is, or whether you take this seriously. We kind of said I'm the cult leader, and you're sort of a prolific poster, like no doubt, and on many different subjects, right? Like I was scrolling through tweets, you write these kind of completely out there diatribes, and like that compels people, right? But I want to ask you, with regards to NFTs, maybe Milady specifically, like you have stayed on board and gotten like logged in every day and posted, like you have repped this brand. How important do you think you specifically maybe were for the brand, like getting on and absolutely schizo posting? How important was that for Milady in growth and just like in terms of propelling this community, like this cult leader aspect? I mean, you are the kind of you are the seminal poster, like you're there every single day in the trenches. How important has this been specifically?
So it is an essential aspect, but the funny thing is, if you asked me maybe a year or two ago, I would have said it's not, because I've always tried to shy away from being the direct center. I think it's a key man risk. You don't want to be the man that's holding up everything, because we often get issues. I can be quite sharp. I have fangs on Twitter, and you piss somebody off, you accidentally, go take a hardline stance against something that's important to them that they disagree with strongly, or you just like maybe even just your banter's a little too sharp and it hurts their feelings. But they come to hate me if I'm the only thing that's making this whole brand, and they hate the whole brand, and that happens a lot, even with our own derivative community. And it's unfortunately, though, I keep getting pushed back into the spotlight. And at the end of the day, it is something that it's something we've engineered. We would say that Remilia is the center force, because we're kind of setting the tone of the culture, and all the people on my team kind of they know how to basically put down pillars for people to organize around, and kind of defined tribal values that are like the base identity of our network. But like my posting every day, I mean, it's important. It attracts people. I think it's really more my thought though. So it's not like I could, I mean, ideally this is something that wouldn't, if I stopped tweeting, this would still survive without any issue. And it would because, if it does, it would because, there are quite a lot of people who understand the sort of philosophy that I've developed and I'm coming from, and would be able to continue operating on those same principles. And I think that's where the cult aspect comes out because, I mean, obviously we called it a coin cult. I introduced myself as a cult leader. It's because I've been called a cult leader so many times. Even this morning, somebody accused me of being a cult leader, and I'm like, you're still going to do that even after we launched our coin called Cult. It's like, yeah, I own the label. Like, how are you fighting me for that? But the reason why is that I guess I'm more like I take a position of a sort of guru or a thinker, that I have a strong vision and philosophy of the world that I'm expressing every day on Twitter, outlining my thoughts. If anybody asks me a question, I'll give them like a multi-paragraph response, expanding on anything. I appreciate that because that's how I, can think through the things I'm thinking through in engagement with with this audience. But then you have people who say like, yeah, this makes sense, and they sign up for the ride, and then now you get people from the outside saying, oh, you're just like, yeah, you're brainwashed. But it's like, you're not brainwashed if it's just a convincing discussion and debate. I welcome debate.
Yeah. Okay. So all that makes sense. All right. Let's get a little bit into the deep lore. What was the Milady Cancel?
Yeah. So it was our self cancel, but it's a little complicated because we didn't self cancel Milady. We self canceled my previous project, Mia, which if you go deeper in the lore, that really is the origin story of Milady and a lot of the early materials that kind of got refined when we moved into Remilia and Milady. But that was we went, that was the 2020 2022 2020 we went super viral with a fake Instagram that was saying that there was a Nazi anorexia cult, and that this was forcing girls to be racist online. And then we had fake posts saying yeah, it's all real, and we went really viral on Instagram. And then we had a post saying that, yeah, you just got psyop. This was a 2-week experiment by Mia. And then that was it. But we got big enough that some news articles were written, and that was something that we used to do on Mia a lot. You can see it how Milady psyops have also been a useful vector for grabbing attention and growing our community. So we've been doing psyops for a while now. But with Milady, when it grew bigger, there were some rivals who were familiar with my old work. They tried to dig that up. They convinced some people from CT. Honestly, I think they legitimately just got baited by these guys. But they came out, wrote some threads trying to cancel us. They tied it to a bunch of other confusing stuff, like some other cult that was supposedly a suicide cult. It wasn't. It was an ARG that was themed around serial experiments lane, that in a passing conversation I mentioned I was familiar with to another artist, and they said somehow that made me the founder of that cult. And then that also, that there was some news article where a kid that was part of that ARG committed suicide or something, and now they said, oh, that's a suicide cult. And now it snowballed. But it didn't matter because this is a space that we're very comfortable in. I mean, we're the one that put out the bait originally and created this Nazi anorexia cult that they're working off of. And I don't suicide cult. Some of the stuff I don't own because I'm not interested in. But Nazi anorexia cult, those three I actually think is a great aesthetic combination. I happily accept that. I will probably say we're the Nazi anorexia cult just because it's so fucking comical. The reason why we chose those three is that it's a satire of fear online. It hits on all these bugbears of that there's some secret server that's blackmailing kids into being radicals online, or severely we're severely modifying their body. You have also transgender fears that yeah, they're being groomed into, there was some meme on 4chan of a transgender grooming cult that was the inspiration for that. So we just translated it to Nazi anorexia. The real origin was that one of our friends was getting accused of being a Nazi anorexic because um, they found her Twitter that had some like Dinspo diet posts, and also like she liked like racist George Floyd memes or something like that. So we told her it would be funny if you deflect the cancel, just accuse you of being in a cult and blame it on the cult, and then we ran with it.
This is wild. Okay, the Milady 911. Go into go into as much detail as you want, but this, to me at least, once again, spectating from the sidelines, this was an example of more controversy and then what appeared to be more strength come from the Milady community. So, like, maybe if you could just break that down, like, for a second and explain, the high level of it.
Yeah, I mean, at the high level, it was just some people on my team, they stole from our treasury and then like threatened to FUD. There was a letter sent out asking for more money, or we didn't give it. They went out, they posted this FUD. We disproved it. It was like a kind of like the cancel. It took a week or so before it became clear who was telling the truth and who wasn't. And then the result, though, financially for both the cancel and 9/11, and also some months later when we had a treasury drain. I think these are the three big events you can see right on the chart. There's a giant dump, but what that does is it also it gave the chance for the believers and the people who are deeply engaged and can cut through the BS and the noise to buy in. I think that's also one of the special qualities that's made Milady so robust. It's notable for performing really well during the NFT bear. And then also, I mean, obviously we've worked our way up to a top 3 or top 4 market cap NFT, but as a brand that's like completely alien compared to the other top NFT brands, no VC investment, where we're like sitting at the table with people who've raised 50 to 100 million and huge VC backing.
Wait, sorry, quickly. Can I just ask you about that? Like, what do you think of NFT? I mean, I probably have I probably have a decent, this is sort of like a layup question or loaded question, if you will. But like, what do you think of NFT communities that are like VC backed? Like, is there any opportunity there to create genuine community?
I don't think it's about where the funding comes from. I think that obviously has some consequences on the trajectory financially. It has its advantages and its risks on the chart. What I was saying is just basically Milady has a lot of distribution events that has created a lot of it's created robustness because Miladies have rotated into the hands of believers in multiple occasions. Regarding the question of NFTs, can they have communities? I think it's more why have they failed to outside of Milady and Remilia and our eco? Because they have failed, and I think they're just approaching it totally wrong. When we set out to create a community, the very first thing we looked for is how do we define some tribal values that could make a member of the community, even if you're not wearing the PFP or naming your bag, identifiable. You can feel like when somebody's a Milady, you can you're messaging somebody on like Telegram, you can guess if they're on the same page or not. Maybe now it's a little harder because there's so many derivatives and such, but still it's our eco. So when I say Milady, I mean just our overall Remilia ecosystem. But when you go look at Bored Apes or anything like that, they're just at most it's like you identify Bored Apes because they tend to be very low information and are often like dunked on and roasted on the timeline for their mistakes. But there's no actual shared identity. If you go into like a Bored Ape group chat or Discord community, it's very similar to any other crypto meme coin, where the only thing they actually share in common is that they're sharing the same bag. And maybe at some high level, it's like, oh, well, I was more attracted to the ape than the penguin. And that was what ended up having me get through the door. And then now I found myself with other people sharing the same bag. But otherwise, there's no real distinction. I think when you say VC backed, what the connotation there is that it's also like sanitized. It's being dressed up for the mainstream. And I think that's one of the big problems. Often when we were smaller, we would get we get advice from VC or whale types, and also just our competitors that would always tell me that you gotta, you can't you can't be posting controversial stuff. You have to, if you want to get retail, you got to be mainstream. And I always strongly disagreed because if you don't draw lines in the sand and you don't create your niche, you're not going to actually build a diehard community. You're not going to attract anybody. You're not going to stand out. And I think that bet has played out very well for us. So we're very conscious about some of the battles, which ones we do and don't take. But if you don't take any battles, you don't form a real community that puts on the armor for you. Even just like as I was saying, like the cyber anarchism of Milady, we also made sure to provide a few different things. You don't have to give a shit about anti-woke and all that, but still caring about cypherpunk values or caring about just this post-authorship art movement represented by Vermillion overall. These are all things that are platforms that we've put out for people that are otherwise underserved. We also had there are really more banners that call out to these communities. Another example is courting hikikomoris to NEETs and autists, which is also something that fits into our anti-censorship and anti-cancel culture, because I'm very fond of the autists of the world that are, behind all of the long form investigative articles of any subject, whether it's like mechanical keyboards or like, analysts of optimizing somebody's GitHub repo. And these are people who also have gotten very alienated in the last decade because they just don't have the capabilities to navigate a woke social environment where there's so many hidden rules to not like get pushed out, especially because canceling is always a lot. It's not political so much as it is social, and it's like socio-political in the sense that it's just people doing Machiavellian games. They're just trying to find excuses to push out competition. So I knew that there were so many of these alienated hikikomori types, these NEETs, and just by putting up a banner too, it's a super unique part of our community. So it's all these things. And when I look at like how consciously we did all this, we put up banners, we tried to define what our community is. And then you look at the other projects and it's just WAGME, it's nothing. Yep. It's soulless. It has no identity. So I don't think it's necessarily because of the VC backing, but because whether or not they had it, I mean, a lot of projects don't, but they're just strategically approaching it wrong. They don't have an identity.
Thanks for listening to The Gort Show on the Blockspace Podcast Network. Subscribe to our newsletter at blockspace.media to get the show directly to your inbox. Show links, transcripts, and Bitcoin articles twice per week. Stay ahead of the conversation by visiting blockspace.media.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you then, like, obviously, Murad has pushed, so I'm using him as an example, but this is, I think been the sentiment for, let's say, the past 6 months, especially. This, we don't have to go down the whole like financial nihilism route, but we can talk about meme coins for a second. And I wanted to ask, I have this theory, and I'm genuinely interested. I think probably no better person to ask than you. I find meme coins, they're fun. Maybe there's some community built around them. And I know you have just launched or been, part of the cult launch. So we can talk about that in a second. But to me, meme coins are still very much the WAGME. And I counter on the other side of this. I tweet about this and I actually use Milady as an example. I think my theory is that Milady holders are far more price insensitive than meme coin holders. And so I'm curious about your thoughts in terms of, is there such thing as a way to create a similar cultish identity for a meme coin? When I look at some of the Miladies, like here's a good example. Kobe has a Milady, right? He doesn't use it as a profile picture, but I know he has a Milady. There's probably almost nothing. There's probably no amount of money that you could probably offer Kobe for his Milady. I don't see this. And maybe it's just like my mind can't really, I can't wrap my head around this, but like I don't see this same dynamic playing out with meme coins. There is always some marginal price where somebody is exiting. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this kind of like WAGMI versus, there are some people who will probably never sell their Miladies, right? They will hand them down to you. You never hold a Milady. You merely look after it for the next generation types. Like I really do believe that. But what are your thoughts then, like with regards to meme coins? Like, is my thinking directionally correct or not?
Yeah. So there's a few things I want to respond there. First, I would say with Murad's coin thesis, I think really what I feel like people misunderstand what he's written. And it's kind of funny because now, we had our coin called Cult, and we've been talking about Milady as a cult. And I feel like my definition is different from his, but his point is really about it applies to Milady with the price action I mentioned, where there's been significant drawdowns that created accumulation opportunities for believers. And a lot of the cult coins on this chart, they come out of our community. Projects like MOG, SPX, they all have the same history too, where they've had long accumulation periods before the breakout, which was which is really what he means there. That's the distinction between that and another meme coin that really hasn't had a chance to distribute and prove itself with a community that's still diehard and still believes in it, even over months of poor or sideways price action. I agree though. Like when I think about WAGMI, I think what I would define that as is communities who basically are gaslighting themselves and each other. And when they go in, they're saying, when you say WAGMI is not a positive statement. It's aggressive and hostile. What you really mean is that I'm trying to manipulate you into thinking that I believe that it's always going to go up forever, so that you keep holding so that I can dump on you. And it's just a big game of chicken, really. So when you go into some Telegram and they're all WAGMI, they're all just like holding a gun to each other, pretending they're not, waiting for the chance to dump before the other guy does. It's just a game of chicken. So we've aggressively not WAGMI'd at Milady, and we've also definitely promoted price insensitivity. I can't say we're the only ones that are price insensitive at this stage, because a lot of other derivatives from our eco have also embodied that. But I do think we were the first.
Well, let me ask you, like, what about like Crypropunks? I see a similar dynamic there, but I don't know if you have different thoughts, or maybe you don't.
I mean, that's a good example, but they're also like, I don't think Cryptopunks had that chance to go through a distribution period. I think they're more of an example of a supply controlled type of chart, which is just a different category essentially. Sort of like the VC-backed ones. They're not organic. But also the question of meme coins, I know that they get a lot of bad rap. I actually am a big believer in the meme coin. I think there's something elegant in there's a purity to essentially just financializing speculation. I think they're imperfect or incomplete. I don't know what an ideal, like when you look at them as a pure metric of speculation or attention, they're not that pure. There's a lot of manipulation that can happen. There's a lot of concerns about supply distribution, et cetera, that deviates from just the basic, is this a financialization of attention? Maybe something more like a universal prediction market is where we'll start to see true meme coins that actually can financialize a meme, which is really just like an idea virus. But I do think that's something that crypto would, in just a general acceleration of financialization. I think being able to truly financialize ideas is a worthy goal. So I don't I know crypto meme coins are both dirty but also not, in the sense that I think they are reaching towards something that's an ideal. Now the question of, is it possible to break out of this WAGMI cycle of meme coins? Not to market my own project, but this is something.
No, go ahead. We're happy to let anybody show on here or not show. This is an open forum.
Yeah, it's something that was a very conscious question with us launching Cultcoin. And because obviously we've achieved it with Milady, and the question is, if we're going to go into the space of a fungible token, how do we keep this going without it being just us launching some shitcoin, which is absolutely not what we're interested in doing. What we want to do is continue accelerating and growing the movement that we have. So with Cultcoin, the design is we didn't do it's not a fully distributed coin, we have a withheld supply for incentives, and we've built we call it the manipulation fund, actually. And it's like we take like Blur's seasonal distributions based on points, but now instead of us, we're not a protocol, and we're not trying to farm for you know yeah farm like you have users farming the airdrop, but you also have the protocol itself is farming users so that they can then take these numbers, raise again, and then use that for their airdrop. That's a basic, not to be so cynical, but that is basically the airdrop meta. But what we're trying to do is manipulate our users in the sense that we're trying to create financial incentives to organize them organically in ways that can best help accelerate our memetics, because it is a meme coin, so its growth is based purely on attention. But now we have a sort of I think of it like a sort like a financial hose. Like I'm shooting money out in different directions and spreading it across the network to create behaviors that might help maximize memetics. And when we launched Cult, we had done it with a snapshotted airdrop to our community, and that was a kind of proof of concept of what we were planning to do, because we didn't just like take, okay, here's, if you have 10 Miladies, you get this much airdrop. What we did was we had over 100 achievements on chain that were like things like you bought the Milady after 9/11 during the 9/11 dip, for example, because that's a sign that you're a true believer. And we thought through each of these achievements and the amount we were given to each one based on is this a profile of somebody who's going to be a high EV, positive EV in the long term for the coin? Do we want them holding more of the coin versus the other person? And we went through. We did a lot of on chain analysis. We even did something like after Miladies received a large airdrop for Athena, but it was for one per wallet, even if you hold multiple. So after that, a lot of Miladies sybiled their wallet, spread it across to multiple wallets. And other projects might think of that as, well, that's sibling, so we need to punish it and like ignore the other ones. But we actually checked manually, got all that data, figured out which ones were, and we made sure to collate them together and combine them, because we thought about it and we decided, well, there's nothing to punish about that behavior. It's perfectly fine for a community sybil to maximize their receipt of airdrops coming into our ecosystem. It's just more liquidity. So we made sure to capture that and reward them instead. So that's been our thought process through all of this. And right now we're building like a single sign-on that allows people to connect all the various wallets, and if they want to opt in, they can connect Twitter, Discord, even we have a Minecraft server, and we built an integration so they can connect Minecraft, and also our social media platform. It's like a sort of evolution of 4chan, but Milady Chan, but there too, it's tracking all their data if they log in and connect, and that way we can distribute points from a 360 perspective. So this is how we've kind of thought through on a mechanical level, how can we take a meme coin and actually achieve these behaviors that we're looking for of robust activity and like long-term thinking. So it's a 3-year bet. So there's, we're putting our community in a position where they have to think longer than just a few months. And that's something we always say. If you compare to other projects, we talk about 1,000-year dynasty, and I'm serious when I say that, because I believe what we're building here is something that will have lasting, permanent effect. I think already we've crossed enough lines that we've hit the history books, and even like just on a pure financial level, these assets that exist now, we're at least talking about 10-year timelines. And you go to your other average other project, they barely have a plan that's longer than 3 months.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, I want to ask you about derivatives. There's a ton of Milady derivatives. Like, where did this start, and how have you responded? I know you guys have like a very I would say like somewhat unique approach, and maybe maybe one of the few communities that has been very open to derivatives. What is the rationale behind this?
It's something that we've supported from the beginning. Actually, our name Remilia comes from, it's a character in this game series Toho, and we basically Toho Project was it was just an arcade shoot 'em up type indie game. One developer, but he in the 90s in Japan, he was very positive about any fan art that was being produced around that game series and started to include those art into his future releases. If they created new OC characters, he started to bring them in a way that was a very positive engagement with his community of like fan artists. Whereas the rest of the Japanese scene, the culture at the time was very anti-fan art. They considered it like sort of copyright infringement. And it's today like Toho Project is huge, even though it's still just a one-man team. And so taking the name Vermilion Collective was kind of a way of us signaling allegiance to that ethos. So with Milady, with derivatives, we had a strategy of absolutely encouraging it. And when I said we're kind of a counter thesis to Bored Apes, I think it's in three ways. One of them is the identity element that we talked about, and the second one is that when I looked at Yuga, their strategy with any derivative was just shutting it down. They'd aggressively either ignore it or push it out of the community, kind of treat it as threats to their own liquidity. But I thought they were missing something because when you look at it now, something like Pudgy Penguins is clearly actually a derivative of Bored Apes. They're adjective animals, and there was a whole wave of these adjective animals. And if Yuga had and Yuga should have understood that these were inevitable anyway. You can't stop it on chain. There's no way to they've actually tried to do some copyright takedowns, but it's not. You're not going to really stop the wave. And of course they couldn't. Now they got flipped by Pudgy Penguins. But what we did was instead we encouraged it. We promoted it. We helped derivatives grow. And we used that as a way to get early mindshare domination by having, it's like Mao saying, let 100 flowers, let 100 ideologies bloom. We very early on, started to get everywhere, even while we were still a tiny collection in market cap. Because we just had so many new collections coming out, and each new collection, they're always started by a group chat, small team, and then their own friends and believers, and then they grow their own fans. Kind of like how I mentioned that Milady has layers that appeal to different people. Now you also have different derivatives that appeal to different people. So it was growth. It wasn't as Yuga saw it as sucking from their own liquidity, rather than it was bringing new liquidity in. It created new projects. It let people also get in early too. If you missed some Milady mint, you already lost your 10x, but now here's a new mint. So it got people in that otherwise might not have been. And still, they're part of our ecosystem. They were all part of the same cultural tribe. They all posted as Miladies. They were all welcomed in. So it was growth of our eco. So that was that was a strategy that we very consciously had, and I think it was super effective.
I completely agree, but I'm just curious, how do you go about, I don't know if you do it all, but how do you go about kind of deciding whether to lend credence or legitimacy versus, is there any kind of methodology in your mind? If somebody creates some derivative and it, in your mind doesn't follow the ethos in some capacity, or is it just, like you said, just shoot out everything and it's all attention's good attention, right? And then the original Milady Maker project is sort of the canon, right? It's what everybody aspires for. But I am curious if you have any, you look at projects and say, okay, well, this doesn't align with sort of our vision or not.
Yeah, it's we definitely do gatekeeping, but it's also a very delicate process. I have very rarely spoken directly out against any derivative unless it was directly a scam or very obviously a grift. But Miladies have a good sense, a good antenna. You can see somebody come in the community, they post "wag me," but they're wearing a Milady. It's okay, you're it's like the how you do fellow kids. It's like a Fed wearing the hat backwards and the skateboard.
Yeah.
Or you can see too, how many other Miladies are they following? How long have you known them? So it's organic, and we do have a lot of issues with you get grifters coming in, even if that's an easy tell. But somebody could also just spend 1 month, befriend people, and then launch a collection, make money, and then dip. Right, it happens. But so it's a trade off, and our ethos is basically if I know something, we try to keep a network. I see myself as a steward of this ecosystem. So I step in if I think that there's something that's harmful or risky for my people. But I don't think of it in terms of like, oh, is it good for Remilia? Because we're a full ecosystem. Remilia is the face of it and the head. But as long as our community is doing well, they're eating well, it's good for our ecosystem. So, some of them elect to deliver royalties to Remilia, some don't. It's not like we enforce it or anything like that. That's purely voluntary. But those are signals. Then it makes Milady think, okay, these guys are more aligned. They're not going. The big risk is just you mint out an NFT collection and then you stop supporting it and you disappear. And now you basically got rugged. So like that's like the caution that they have to take. But it's also like the ones we promote, we wait until they've proven themselves and have grown their community and shown that they're legitimate actors. And only teams that have been around for a while and we know are serious, we know them well, do we sometimes promote on their launch.
Yeah.
Because I'm just concerned about it. If we promote a launch, people get rugged, then it's like, it might as well have been us rugging it.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you just about the NFT community going forward, like maybe step out of, strictly what you do on a day-to-day basis and just talk to me about where you see this going, right? Like, you'll hear VCs say that the go-to like troll is the concert tickets as NFTs. We'll see, right? Like, who knows? But I'm curious if you, like, outside of maybe Milady, like, what do you think of the NFT ecosystem as a whole? Maybe it doesn't interest you at all, but if you have any thoughts, I'm just curious. Like, feel free to go on a diatribe against NFTs at large, whatever you want to talk about.
Even like NFTs are something that were described in the 90s in the cypherpunk mailing list before Bitcoin was even a thing. Like they used to generate at a high level, like digital trading cards or collectibles that are unique. I think also them being used for on-chain titling, like your house deed and that kind of thing, makes sense. There's some discussion that this could also be integrated into the real art world. I'm not so sure because I don't think people realize just how shady and dark art world financial schemes and collector agent coordination is. I don't think they'd invite transparency.
Yeah.
But I think, just as a base technology, I mean, I believe blockchain will get adopted, not just for financial goods, but like for supply chain. And it makes sense too that it would, like an example of like a house deed or a title, that should obviously be an NFT. Like it makes perfect sense. And I think that's just a process that'll happen with like, government regulation, eventually like adopting it as the tech gets better and better. Then there's questions of like, okay, well, that's not very interesting to an audience that's really like thinking, well, is there an NFT I can bet on? We're in the space of the 10K PFP NFT. This is not, it's not trying to be one-of-one NFT art, which is supposed to supposedly replace like the white walled galleries. I find that very dubious. But what is a 10K PFP NFT is really just a financial model, almost like a gamified finance experiment. I think Crypropunks were I can't call it genius. I think it was more an accidental experiment, but it was an innovation. It was a discovery of the perfect confluence of certain financial mechanisms. The mint itself is a lottery. Being flat price allows there to be a lot of unmet demand on a fast mint that also gives people the chance when you're minting, you have a chance to get a rare, you have this lottery incentive. So it creates this immediate flow to do a mint out and like basically seed a project with a starting market cap, compared to like a meme coin, like you launch something on Pump Fund, you have to work your way up. But NFTs are basically start with their own seeded price. And then also their illiquidity is a value add too. It makes the price more inflexible. So they don't have to deal with a lot of the volatility that you have to do if you're dealing with a meme coin, but you still get to basically play the same game of attention and spectacle. But also by being a PFP, there's a lot more sticking power. You create friends through there. There's a tribal element. that makes it hard to just change off. It's easy to just sell your bag and move on to the next one for a meme coin, for an NFT. You're married to it much stronger, and it becomes like part of your own identity. And honestly, I think there's these esoteric effect where like you start to identify with it, and that also has more sticking power than just identifying with your bag and whatever ticker. I don't know if this is something that like I think it's almost a gamified ecosystem we're playing in. It might evolve a little bit. There are experiments with 404s, or we were an early adopter of NFT liquidity and supplying like NFT floor, fractionalized floors for our NFT to make the price even more inflexible. But I don't know. I've seen some of the more advanced experiments that we've done. They get confusing, and for a market dealing with these big tickets, but also large number of holders, complications are not good. You need something that's simple enough for people to understand to get enough bodies in the door. So I think it's also slow moving. It's not like the technology is hard. There's a lot of it experimental work done in NFTs, but none of them do well because there's not really a market for it, when really what people are psychologically doing is trading like Counter-Strike skins. They're trading Counter-Strike guns.
Yeah. The 10K PFP is just so obvious, right? Like for crypto Twitter, like it makes all the sense in the world. And like you said, I think you're spot on that people do sort of start to embody, they start to post, and maybe for Milady, that's a good thing. Maybe you would argue that for Bored Apes, it becomes increasingly low signal. I wanted to ask, like, last poll, I mean, I'm sure you recall, we had all of these kind of going back to these like one of ones now, and you saying that supplanting like MoMA or the Guggenheim. I don't know, like I'm not really so deep in the weeds on art, right? But like trying to compete with like the art world and like all the nefarious stuff that goes on there, like pure money laundering and like storing these things. I've read some crazy articles, right, about like Russian oligarchs storing these things offshore, but a lot of those are like more, that's very different in my mind than this like 10K PFP thing. I want to ask then, like Fidenza, it's like, do you see a future for that type of NFT, or is that sort of like something that we all willed into existence, assuming that a bunch of degens who made a ton of money like yield farming on Yam ended up like having good taste in some type of one of one, like whatever those kind of like that type of art is called. Like, what do you think of the future of like that type of NFT? Like, is that coming back or not really in your perspective?
I think you have to place it in a context of art history. Like, there is precedent for generative art. Nothing actually like that was done by art blocks, the Fidenzas, anything was innovative whatsoever, besides it happening to be on NFTs. Like, these are things that people have been doing. Generative art, like, it's been done since even the 70s. But also like the works that they were doing are like identical in like technical ability than things you'd see in like the 2000s, 2010s. But also art is not about innovation. It's about branding and market positioning. So like something like Fidenza, it rode the right wave. It had a narrative. It could have people back it with this sort of meme of like, the NFT art world, digital art, generative art, blah, 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 which is all it takes for something to get established in the art world. The question, though, is now, fine, they have a position for themselves, but, you look at Artbox, Legendary fall off, they diluted themselves because they just kept running with the same thing, and they didn't curate their collections at all. They if you look at it from a perspective of a art agent and gallery, horrible dilution of their own niche. They also did little work to properly like contextualize it from a critical perspective to get it any lasting power in the art world. So the buyers are not coming from the art world. Some of them were. They had some early motion there, but they just didn't. They mismanaged it. I think the end result you'd see is Fidenzas, and some of the top ones might stay around. What is it? It's like Chromie Squiggles, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I do think they got into the hands of actual art collectors, and art collectors are very similar to when you imagine like I don't know, crypto whales, where they'll do supply cornering, that kind of thing. They'll coordinate and like, collectively align their incentives to push price, and they have much longer timescales. But I don't think you're going to see in crypto, things always operate on metas. You missed Fidenza, so you catch the beta Fidenza, right? That's not how it works in art. You have to find the new niche, and there's not much staying power in this whole generative art meme. Really, it's like fit into this gamified financial model of just like they're the same as the 10K PFPs. They just kind of dressed them up a little bit. But when you're still doing the mint process with multiple, and there's also senses of rarity, it might as well be a 10K PFP, which is not very like, I would never people have offered to take Milady and put it in a gallery. We would not do that. That would totally divorce it of all the actual artistic ethos that it has and its motion, because it's much more than that. But if you were to take some Fidenza, put it up on a gallery, it's what they'd love to do. I'm sure they've done it a few times. It's just like, that's trash art. It's not art. It's like, it's so low motion. And, I also insult and criticize my actual contemporary artists too. It's not just I'm against other NFT projects. I have a very specific standard for what I consider to be legitimate art in the contemporary period. But just even like in terms of what bets are you going to make, I don't think that has real lasting power. What I do think though, well, I think the metaverse and these kinds of things, I know the meme's been totally run through with like crypto rug metaverses, but it is very legitimate to expect in like some 10, 15 year timeline that VR and AR will be heavily normalized, and people will start to spend significant amounts of times in a augmented environment, just as much as we spend time on like the timeline or on our phones. And in that context, with like social metaverse platforms, it's likely you'll see this sort of equivalent of digitized collectible art. It might take the context of digital fashion. It might be actual like pseudo art, virtual art on the walls, sculptures for their metaverse loft. But I think that's where you will see, more meaningful replication of what purpose an art world collection serves, but in this virtual environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have to ask you, do you have any thoughts on ordinals?
We're very Ethereum aligned, and we're also very Bitcoin aligned. I believe in those two big ones. And so I was interested with ordinals to see if we should explore something there. Milady was, I think, inscribed into an ordinal as one of the first 10,000. And like we have a couple derivatives there that have been performant, but it's not actually decentralized. So yeah, that's what I'm not very interested.
It feels
from a political alignment perspective, but then it's like it's not decentralized.
Yeah, it feels also, I don't know if this was your perspective, but it's hard for me to glean. I'm not like so in the weeds on this, but it felt maybe a little bit forced, right? Like at the beginning, especially. And so I kind of had that bias. And then I personally own some ordinals, but I don't have I have no read really. Maybe I should get somebody on here like the puppet guy or something, right? And like get his perspective. But yeah, I don't have much of a read on like the current state or future, longevity of the ordinals ecosystem. There's people who are interested, but I don't spend a lot of my time on that, right? So I just didn't know if you had any other thoughts. But
yeah, I'm like I'm open to exploring it. I just haven't been seriously convinced. In general, the way we approach with because it would involve also launching a new collection, which we're extremely hesitant to do. We only have two main ones in the PSP landscape, Milady and its beta, Romilio. And then we have other ones that were released but are distinctly tertiary. There are more concept projects released in various, unique is like financial experiments, or integrated in other ways. But we also do it. One of the biggest values derivatives have had as NFTs have grown is dominating on other chains. So like Kimono Naki rose to the top of Base, and Retardio rose to the top of Solana. So
Yeah.
On Ordinals, Bitcoin, what are they called? Puppets?
Yeah.
I mean, they're generally friendly with Miladies. They're kind of Milady posting style, but they're not from our eco. So, but I don't know. I'm not very interested to like go out and like launch a collection there in a space that we're not. There's not really like, we don't launch collections to make money. We do it when there's a reason to set down a tribe and like capture more audience in the overall movement. It comes natural, So like it's not like we're trying to think, well, can we get away with doing a mint? Most of our collections have been after Milady have been given away for free or free to our holders.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to. I'm a closet Bitcoiner maybe, so I'd love to see you guys explore Bitcoin at some point. What you mentioned Base. What happened with Base? Like there was some controversy I remember. And like what ultimately transpired there?
It was, I've seen this kind of thing play out before, not even in crypto, just in general. It was like an overzealous Discord mod started banning the Kimono Nakis because presumably he was some woke or just power tripping mod. And I think initially the base leadership like kind of hesitated and defended the Discord mod, and that was a very poor strategic decision. But Jesse has been really good since, walking that back, apologizing, and like trying to, make amends for it. I think it was honestly just a unforced error in their accidentally souring a major part of the community. There's suspicions, though, that maybe there was other people too involved that might have been doing some suppression, despite Kimono-Naki, like they were performing very well, but not getting a real like reach out or things like that soured a lot of community feelings. That's something that we've experienced almost everywhere in crypto until like we achieved a status of like total domination. But we get handicapped all the time. Quiet like ceilings put up above our heads from like some guy on the team that hates us.
That's like a little bit. I didn't know. I mean, it's good to hear that Jesse's been like since then fairly receptive. I just didn't know if that was something that Base like actively tried to discourage, because I'm sure you can imagine if there is an NFT collection that they may actively try to discourage, it might be the most uncensored. But that is good to hear. I'm glad that
Jesse and on an official level they've been great. It's like how like Twitter before Musk, it's like people get politicized and internally, even if it's not the official mandate, they go and take their own actions. And like, at this point, I don't even know we have a list of maybe 50 different things that you can be offended of. So we don't even know what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the hate I think we get is just purely because we went entirely around the cabal and just rose to the top fully organically, went around the VCs and like all the whales. So that's still, I think, our biggest ops.
For sure. I completely agree. That's, at least once again from the sidelines, that's generally what I've observed. Okay, I want to ask you one last question, and you can go on for as long as you want about this. But you said that what you're trying to build is a 1,000-year dynasty, and yeah, like from what I hear, sounds like the conviction is there. Maybe first of all, what does that mean, and what's the next step? Like, does Milady become a household name? Like, is this the counterculture movement that can really kind of like transcend crypto Twitter? I think it has to some extent already, but like, where do you see this going? And in terms of sustainability, I mean, like you said, you guys like outperformed during the bear. I view Milady holders as, like I said, probably being one of the most price insensitive NFT holders. How do you keep this up? And like, what is your grand vision?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I should give the 5-year, 10-year, 100-year, 1,000-year vision, but definitely we have a lot of following outside of crypto Twitter as it is, and they just haven't really had a way to get in because they're not people that are going to play with NFTs, or they're just not on Twitter itself. But even like my old work with Mia, who most of crypto Twitter just understands as, the canceled Nazi anorexia call, but what it actually was a accelerationist schizopoetic theorist persona project. Like is one way to summarize it. But basically, I was writing a lot of accelerationist AI theory, which has a legitimate following in the Bay Area. That was around 2019, and a lot of what I was talking about then are only starting to come into relevance today, and a lot of predictions in what I was writing then are coming true now. So that's something that we have a lot of goodwill, and like if you go into the Bay and go to any major, like any of the AI teams, they're probably familiar with Milady, which is very surprising for people that are immersed in crypto Twitter, and it's largely due to that following. And that's something that we're actually now that we've launched Cult and we're starting to reinvest the proceeds from our ICO into the team. We're planning to build an AI research lab and do experiments with kind of our art experiments using AI. We're partnering with some teams from that network. So that's like one strategy, for example. Just how do we get to total, like when we talk about world domination or global culture war? It's like, okay, I want to take over the AI and tech scene in a way that Milady is just as known as it has been on crypto Twitter. On another level is this political space. Actually, again, that's where Mia first gained prominence. It was engaging in dissident right thought. And this is now something that, like, if you look at like when Vance was nominated, he's following like lots of our mutuals and people from that space and our space. And this kind of scene, even like we mentioned Urbit early on, Curtis Yarvin has started to go in, have a huge permeation in that side of things. And that's somewhere that Milady also just stands right alongside. Our general strategy has always been, we think in terms of a cultural upstream. If we go and target groups that are small but highly influential, or people that are just very energetic and agentic and go on to be highly influential, in a 1 or 2 year timeline, it spreads out and has effect. Another group that we've courted is just generally the arts, especially younger art student age types. There's probably not an art school in America where they're not familiar with Milady or Amelia. If you could go to any BFA program for a good art school, whether they hate it or love it or are quietly fascinated about it, but wouldn't say the name out loud unless you say it first, like a secret. So we do the Milady raves. People in crypto think of it as just like, oh, we throw a good party, but actually this has been it's been a sort of, well, not a psyop, but a kind of guerrilla, a honey trap for their conversion mechanism for local scenes, bringing them onto our movement digitally. We work with like local venues and local groups that are like into everything we're doing culturally, and put on the raves for them, help platform them with our funding, and then while the Miladys are all invited, it's also like a lot of the people there are only familiar with Milady as a sort of fashion art movement. They don't even they're only dimly aware if there's anything crypto related. Again, that's something too that like people have always like, I mean, now they don't, but early on they always didn't understand the strategy. It's like, well, how do you convert them into buying the coin? How do you, or the NFT? How do you? Where's the conversion? It's like, it's the other way around. I'm converting them into buying into the culture. The culture rises. I don't need actual people. I don't need them buying. I don't need their money. The culture, the price is a proxy of our cultural saturation. So as long as the culture is rising, people will buy in, because really the money's coming in as a speculation on our growth, not because if we. It's not like advertising. If you send out a billboard to 1,000 people, then 1% will buy in. It's instead people speculating that billboard is going to create conversion. Anyway, that's the 1 year, the 1 or 2 year. When I say 1,000 years, what I'm talking about is in a more long term. We have Milady Chan, which is a proof of concept for something we've been working on as a kind of new approach to decentralized social media, one that's integrated financially and that has native recommendation algorithms that can help make fluid conversation and fluid networking between its users. And that's something that we've been talking about for a long time and are excited to start building now that we've got funding in hand. And that leads into building a metaverse. It leads into the work that we're doing in AI to make it augmented with AI and basically just turn this network that we have into a full wide use mainstream social media platform that's imbued with the same ideals and like this sort of thesis on posting and culture natively, rather than like if you look at like Facebook or Instagram, they all come from a very opinionated approach. Every social media is opinionated on what its users what they want to platform for the users, and the users get trained into that opinionation. I think not the other way around. So we have a very strong, unique opinionation, and that's something that we've just been growing and growing. And the question of, well, it would be a dominant one is just a question of how many users will get converted into this form of engagement online. The reason why I say 1,000 years is I have a perspective that when AGI comes, that everything that we'll do will just get accelerated into infinity. So that's how you get to 1,000.
Well, this has been awesome. Very different than what I normally do. I think people will love this, though. I sat here fascinated the whole time. Like, I know you don't do many podcasts. I'm elated that you came on, and yeah, I think this will be fantastic. So, thank you so much. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to ramble.
Yeah, you do a great job of it.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.